Bienvenidos a esta edición virtual como parte de las presentaciones híbridas, por razones que ya todos conocemos y que, bueno, esperemos que estemos de salida en esta trágica pandemia que nos afectó a todos. Yo soy Wenceslao Bruciaga, esto es la Feria Internacional del Libro de Guadalajara 2021. Y bueno, estoy muy contento de presentar un gran libro que sin lugar a dudas es de For the Good Times, por los buenos tiempos, de David Keenan. Esta mesa será una pequeña charla con su autor, que para quienes no lo conozcan, David Keenan es un gran personaje, es un tremendo escritor, un periodista musical también, del que yo he aprendido mucho. Creo que se necesita buen periodismo musical en esos tiempos de objetividades inconclusas y necias, y creo que hace... Pero también es un gran escritor, es un gran escritor con una pluma muy vívida, es como si se leyera en clave de beat, y es muy interesante. Y bueno, recién acaba de sacar este libro que se llama Por los buenos tiempos, que es sobre lo que vamos a platicar. David, thank you so much for this time, for this interview.
Thank you. It's great to see you again, Wenceslao, my friend.
Hey, how are you? We are in a very international conversation. You are in Scotland right now?
Yes, I'm in Glasgow in Scotland. This is my writing room where I do all my writing.
Okay, I'm in San Francisco, so we are very international.
Wow.
That's good. David, how are you? Congratulations for your new book. How do you feel about it?
I'm very happy with it. It was a book that, For the Good Times, was a book that I always knew I would write ever since I was a young man. Growing up, it's very much inspired by my father and his brothers, my uncles, who grew up during the Troubles in Belfast, and they were illiterate. They couldn't read or write, but they had such faith in the power of words and in storytelling. And so when I would listen to the way they talked, even though they were illiterate, I loved the way they told stories. And I said to myself, one day I will write a book based around these men with that kind of style, which was about faith and language and resilience under difficult situations, which was how they inspired me.
Your father was, well, I don't know, your father is alive or dead? But,
he's dead. My dad's dead, yeah.
But your father was from Ireland?
Yes, he was from Belfast. He came from Belfast. And as I say, he grew up during the Troubles. He left and came over to Glasgow, but the rest of his brothers stayed. They lived in an area called the Ardoyne in Belfast, which is where For the Good Times is set, a particular little, predominantly Roman Catholic village, which was kind of the epicenter of the violence in Belfast in a lot of ways.
Yes, because that's one of my question, actually, because you are an Scottish writer, so why do you choose to write a novel about the IRA? And how do you remember the IRA when you were a child?
Well, it was a total part of my childhood because, my father's brothers still lived in Belfast, so sometimes they would visit and they would come over and stay with us, or they would phone, and so we would really know just how crazy and how violent and terrifying day-to-day life was in Belfast during those days. But no one could avoid it, because if anywhere in the UK, it was always on the news. The IRA were always blowing up things, they were always blowing up a building, or there was always someone getting shot. There was a daily reality of that kind of violence. So it was just a huge part of my childhood. And oddly, you can feel a strange nostalgia even for terrifying situations. And I think what part of the book deals with is almost a sort of nostalgia for terror as well, when things are could be because historically we can kind of look back at them and kind of understand them a little bit, But the IRA and the Troubles was such a part of my childhood that they're just part of the weft and weave of it,
Yes, and well, you inspired in your father, but what was your inspiration for the four main characters? Because the story of the novel is around our four guys that are amazing guys. So you have an inspiration for your father, but what comes the inspiration for the other main characters?
Again, it was kind of the way my dad and his brothers would tell stories. I wanted to create these characters who were kind of quite charming,
Okay.
suave. You kind of fall in love with them. They're funny, they're lovable, and then suddenly they commit these acts of like unspeakable violence, incredible psychopathic violence that if you were on the wrong side of it would be terrible. But yet you care for these characters. So I wanted to be able to show how you can actually still, and a violent person or a person who's capable of violence is still a human who it's still possible for you to care for. So that explains why when I was growing up, I would always be like, well, how can you justify these terrible acts of violence? And then you would meet some of the guys involved in it and you're like, that guy's a decent guy. There was this conflict between the two. So I wanted to show that. I wanted to show violent men sympathetically.
Yes. You're talking about a very complicated issue, at least for that time. Yes, because what is your opinion about the masculinity of the characters? Because right now we live a moment when the masculinity is a complex situation, and we're talking about the construction of the masculinity, and we propose another kind of being man, or at least cis man. But yes, exactly. What is your opinion of the masculinity of the characters? Wouldn't it be considered toxic masculinity, or
no? I don't believe masculinity is toxic. I don't believe masculinity on its own is toxic. That's a crazy to me. Yes, there are toxic men, but masculinity itself is not something that is toxic. Masculinity is something that can be incredibly beautiful, but also incredibly dangerous. Also dangerous. Just the reality of being a man is a dangerous thing to be, because there is a potential for physical violence at any point for a man. So being a man is dangerous. And also there are powers in men that can overwhelm us and that can be very hard to control, that are irrational. I don't believe that man is conditioned by society. I think society helps to hold man back from some of his natural instincts, and we should be all glad of that, because when it breaks down, then there's trouble. And what happens at Northern Ireland to a certain degree is that did break down. There was lawlessness, and so masculinity was running riot, out of control, because young men ruled and controlled the streets, literally, and that is a very, very dangerous thing. But I wanted to be tender because, I believe humans are not rational, they're tribal. They're utterly tribal. Yes. And the things they stand up for are the things that their tribes stand up for, not really rationally thought through ideas. That's never the case. It's always one against the other. And you have sympathy, because I don't believe in free will. I don't believe in free will. I can't see any reason why we should. And so ultimately I have sympathy for anyone in any situation, including people who are driven by violence, because it's possible to sympathize with that as well. But I wanted to show that Tommy and the boys are wrestling with what it means to be a man, and there are homoerotic undertones. They love each other, but they find it difficult to express that, because they haven't been exposed to all the different things that masculinity can involve, all the different men that a man can be. They still have quite a narrow view, but they're feeling their way out of it. They're uneducated, but they're able to feel this camaraderie, this love between men, that is possible, that men admit, even masculine men can admit that it is possible for men to be in love, and it doesn't even need to be sexual, but there are complicated relationships between men, much more complicated than you would imagine.
Totally. I mean, so like I'm a gay guy, so I understand you very, very well, because I feel but maybe this is I don't know, this is an unconscious question, because I'm gay, but sometimes I wonder whether there was sexual tension between the main characters, or it's just my imagination. Because, for example, I read a very, very good scene with Sammy, and I don't remember, it's Tommy or Pat. They are going in the backseat in a cab, and they show you his cock.
He takes his dick out.
Say this word. One presentation, but it's okay. Yeah. So, but he shows his cock, but he's talking about girls. I mean, this is a kind. homoerotic, but I don't know. Maybe this is my
Yes,
perception. But how do you
yes,
see
there is.
this sexual tension between this group of male friends?
Yeah, because I wanted to underline that. I mean, you've totally got it, Wenceslao. You are right. Sammy is in love with Tommy. Sammy is so in love with Tommy. Sammy's the main narrator.
Yes,
So it's like
yes,
it's like a love letter to Tommy. The whole book is almost like a love letter to Tommy. And Tommy can do no wrong. Even when Tommy betrays Sammy, and Sammy finds out that Tommy was actually working for the other side as much as he was working for the IRA, he forgives him. In fact, he's even more in love with him. He's like, this guy is the real deal, no matter what he did. He did it 100%. He even fooled me. And Tommy, he's in love with Tommy. And even when he finds out that he thinks that maybe Kathy, who he's had an affair with, is going to be pregnant with his child, but he realises that Tommy also had an affair with her, and Tommy made her pregnant. And in a way, he's even more in awe of that, you know? Because a lot of the book is about males competing with each other. Who can be the hardest? Who can be the most male? But Sammy doesn't really compete with Tommy. Sammy just loves Tommy. You know?
Exactly. So I'm okay, right? Because I was
right.
Yeah, because I was talking with my boyfriend here in San Francisco, and I was talking. I guess something hot relationship between Tommy and Sammy. If no, maybe it's our perception because we are gays and we believe everything is gay. But
yeah, but that's totally true. And it underlines later on, I don't know if you remember, there's an orgy scene that goes wrong. And Sammy and Tommy are both having sex next to each other, fine, and they're quite liking that. But one of the other guys, Cox, touches Tommy's cock. And so Tommy basically beats him apart because it's just gone too far. It's become too explicit for Tommy now. It's okay for Barney and Tommy to sort of love silently almost, but you get a dick near him, he's going to react. He's going to go back on his primal upbringing and his lack of education and his prejudices, you know?
Yes. You gave some information about how was the gay perception in the Ireland of the 70s, or it had some gay, I don't know, persons inside the IRA, or...
Well, I don't know, and I was very intrigued. This is another thing that I made, which made me want to write the book. I wondered about that, because in any close all-male sort of association or camaraderie, there inevitably becomes homosexual relationships. That's just a fact, whether it's in prison, whether it's the Navy, whatever. So you would think in the IRA, there was actually on the unionist side, there was quite a notorious gay moving into sort of pedo movement. I can't remember the name of them now, but there was actually in real life, quite fascinating. So I kind of heard that. And then so I invented an IRA version of that, which is called the URA, you know, and basically they have these sort of violent homosexual rituals.
Exactly,
you know, which are like witchcraft, you know?
Yeah, I know.
Because it needs to be underground. So they invented us a sort of gay, secret, subterranean, underground gay organization within the IRA, you know?
Oh my God, that's really, really so fascinating, David. Oh, I'm very, I'm very excited with this conversation. David, how much and what type of research did you do for the book? I mean, what's the exhaustive process for the research for the book? I mean, I suppose you took it with your father, but we have a very interesting another date. So, how was the process and what type of research?
Well, what's interesting is I barely did any research at all because I don't. Yeah, well, no, because I wanted it to be. I didn't want it to be like a sort of a macro history, you know, where I got all the big political points, the big moments. I mean, things are mentioned, but only in fleeting, like Bloody Sunday or the hunger strike with Bobby Sands. These big key moments during the Troubles. I didn't want to anchor my book around those. I wanted to be about the experience of normal, small people, everyday people on the street, their telling of history. And so I trusted more my memory and also my dad and his family's misrememberings, because they would get stuff wrong as well. But I would trust that because I wanted it to be a telling. And I thought without even making mistakes, it's not truly a telling. It would be too objective. It would be too researched. So I wrote the entire book from memory without researching anything whatsoever. Wow. And then at the end, I went through to make sure I didn't get anything completely glaringly wrong. But even when I got things slightly wrong, I would sort of keep them in because I would remember that's how my dad described or remembered it, or the word that he would use. So no, I didn't do. I mean, my whole thing is Wenceslao is I don't believe in research. I mean, I'm a novelist. I write fiction, and so I always say research is just an excuse. Research is an excuse for not inventing. You know?
Yes, exactly. And sometimes, and yes, and I mean, the work of a writer is a fiction, no? I mean, interpret the reality. So
Yeah.
sometimes we believe everything with statement with a heart or strict research just for the credibility of something. But you are totally right. David, it's a book. I mean, it's a very funny book. It's a very homoerotic novel, so that's perfect to me. But at the same time, it's very violent.
Yep.
It's a very violent. So I mean, I like that.
Yep.
But what is your opinion about the violent descriptions? And if you have sometimes troubles about, I mean, while you're writing it, oh my god, this is very violent. I don't know.
Yeah.
How was your and most in I ask you that because in this time this kind of violence could be a kind of problematic, for some readers. I don't know. But
Yeah, I
what's
know.
your opinion about
Yeah.
the violence
Yeah.
in the book? And because it's like sometimes I was laughing with very violent situations. Oh my god! I mean, I'm, I'm laughing in a wow. It's surprise. But how do you feel, and what do you think is the violence in your book? I mean,
Well, violence is non-negotiable. Everyone will
wow.
experience. Everyone will experience some kind of different degree of violence in their life. It is a non-negotiable fact. What life asks us to come to terms with is violence and suffering. These things can never be legislated out of existence, and so needed to be faced and got through. In fact, we're lucky to have them because it gives us a chance to redeem reality and to redeem reality on reality's own
Yes.
terms. So I'm not here to try and pretend or make this fantasy world where violence can be controlled or eradicated forever, because it can't. And every single person I know, including every one of my friends, experiences a violence that they would like to do to the world, a violence to other people that they believe would solve the world. Well, guess what? I don't believe in that. I don't believe in that. But then I don't believe in changing the world. I always love that John Cage quote: stop trying to change the world, you'll only make it worse. And I totally believe that 100%. So what I don't come to abolish violence. I come to redeem our vision of violence and suffering. And one of the ways I do that is I laugh at it. I laugh uproariously at it. I ridicule it. I think it is funny. I bring it down to this size because that is one way we can survive the violence, is by redeeming it through the stories we tell about it. And even having a right old laugh about it. Because one of the most amazing things about my uncles, who went through so much suffering as Republicans in Belfast, is they would tell you stories about the worst violence you could ever imagine that they'd experienced, the most horror, and they were pissing themselves laughing and competing to tell the best story. And I would always think, if you're attacked by a bear, right, an actual animal, if a bear attacks you, right, somebody told me this story, I can't think who it was, I always thought it was great. Imagine if you're attacked by a bear. Would you then hold a grudge against that bear for the rest of your life? No. Yes. What you would do is you would go to the zoo where they kept it, and you would point through the bars at the cage and say, fucking hell, look at that. That's that mad bear that attacked me. And I would be like, wow, that's mental, So why would you really have any difference with human beings? Because we believe human beings have some way of deciding whether or not to enter into that kind of violence. I don't know if human beings have any way of deciding anything. I think all we can do is try and more effectively censor those impulses so that they don't run wild, because they're here to stay. As I said, violence is non-negotiable.
That's a great phrase, David.
And we all enjoy it. We all enjoy it, because if you look on social media, you try to tell me the violence with which people attack other people who claim to be good and who attack bad people. The violence with which they do it is animalistic, pack-like, and terrifying, and they love it. They love it.
Yeah, you read my mind, because when I was listening to you, I was remember how it is maybe the violence is moved from from the reality of the pavement, from the reality to the social media, and overall Twitter or Facebook sometimes are very violent with some special. I mean, the troll phenomenon, is very violent against one person.
Well, that's it, because now everyone's violent, because previously you would only get involved in violence on the street if you were hard enough to get into violence. But now you've got these little trolls who aren't even harder, so everyone's violent. So even trolls, little weedy trolls, can now have an avatar and be violent themselves. So there's more violence than ever in the world. Everyone's been empowered to be violent. And a lot of these people are violent against violence. You know what I mean? But that is still a sort of violence.
Exactly. That's very good, because I think that sometimes now that violence is hidden behind this I don't know, progressive attitude maybe, or this kind of idea, or we are very conscious and very tolerant, but at the same time we are very violent with some persons that don't share the point of view, right?
Yeah, it's tribal. It just goes down to, we think those people should be violently destroyed to make the world better, and we think those people should be violently destroyed to make the world better. These are both strategies of violent destruction. I don't want to see any side violently destroyed. I don't.
Yes, totally.
And also, you've got to realize, one of the things about For the Good Times, which I wanted to say, is people think they're above these things. People think that we can somehow act objectively in history, like that we can step out of our ideological background and our pack and somehow act morally.
Yeah.
No, we can't. Anyone who was grown up in the Republican side of Belfast, who lived in the Ardoyne with a Catholic family, had no choice in how they were going to act. No one was able to step outside of that and say, actually, this kind of violence by the IRA is morally wrong no matter what, and I'm not going to stand for it. Impossible. If I had been there, I would have been joining in. Likewise, if I'd been on the other side, if I'd lived up on the Shankill Road, I would probably been involved in the UVF, The idea that we are somehow above the history, that we're not mere players in the show. There's something liberating when we realise that we are. And also when we realise that we are still animals.
Yes. Okay. We are talking about the violent condition in the social media, and how, David. But I don't know, in some moment, meanwhile you writing your novel, do you thinking in this moment of everything or everybody could be cancelled, in this cancel culture? And when I read, I'm really fascinated with your novel. And I read it, oh my God, some scenes with Kathy, for example. I don't want to make some spoiler, because the idea of this conversation is the people about your book. But you think something in cancel culture, meanwhile you're writing the book, and the consequences, or it's not?
I'm well aware of it. I'm well aware that it's often hanging over my head. But the difference with me is I really don't care. I don't care. I never take any. I never allow any single consideration to pass through my mind when I'm writing a book. I would never dream of censoring going down anywhere that art took me, because art and the mission that I'm on and the story that I have to tell has to be told, and I'm here to tell that no matter what. So I don't care. There's nothing that can be done to me. I don't care about any of these shibboleths. And when you say I've offended you or some modern sensibility, you might as well tell me about some edict that some 10 BC God made, and tell me how I'm not in line with that, because that's how relevant it is to me. I don't buy your fictions. I don't buy any of your fictions. I don't buy them. You can live in those fictions, respect you, but they're fictions, and this is my fiction. And fiction on fiction doesn't work. You know what I'm saying? So I accept that, but I just don't buy into it. I'm not buying it, and so I don't answer to it, because I don't believe it. I don't believe it exists, and you will never be able to convince me of that. So I can write totally free of that. And when I wrote it, I realised the thing that did concern me more than being cancelled, which didn't concern me. The thing that concerned me was maybe how raw feelings still were in Belfast.
Yeah.
Were you able to write a book like For the Good Times yet? Are we far away enough that things have healed a little bit? And the amazing answer was, yes, we are able to do that now, because things have moved beyond, and it's quite amazing. Truth and reconciliation in Ireland has worked to a great degree. And I found it very moving, the people who fought on both sides of the conflict, who have told me that they have loved that book and it has meant something to them, and it has caught some of the feel of what those streets felt like. I think that's remarkable. It's remarkable. Even in the book, I wanted to show how men can come together and forgive each other for the trespasses against each other that they made as men. That is remarkable. I think of it as like at the end of a boxing match, when you've spent the entire match trying to pummel this other guy, trying to get him down there, trying to kill this guy. And then afterwards you walk up to him and you embrace him and you congratulate him for fighting as hard as he did. I think that is a brotherly relationship with men, which takes in competition and masculinity and violence, but still affirms it as being part of a brotherhood. Fight like brothers. You know what I mean? But remember your brothers at the end of the day.
Oh, you're making me cry. Well, yes, I'm totally agree, David. Yes, you have all reason and more all this time. David, what is your opinion about the possibility of or do you have thoughts of an Irish reunification, or what is your opinion about it? I mean, this is a political conversation.
I don't know. But one amazing thing to me is that there is no longer an actual war in Ireland. Now, I think if you can achieve that, you can possibly achieve anything, because I certainly would have believed for most of my lifetime that there was no possibility of peace in Ireland. No way. Never could possibly have imagined that. And so that's what I mean. It has been miraculous what's happened in Ireland. And of course, there are still massive problems and there are still fault lines there waiting to be exposed, and there are still a lot of dangerous people in the background there. But the fact that we could even get to this point, well, anything could possibly happen.
Yes, of course. David, I'm very interested in that discussion. Do you believe in God, or because at the end, it's this conflict. Probably in Mexico, we can understand the complete situation of Ireland, but at the end, it's a war between Catholics and Protestants, or is that just in a basic terms, no? And what is your perception about religion in these times? And I'm asking you because Mexico is a very Catholic country too. So, and sometimes I feel Ireland and Mexico have some parallels. It is. Yes. Mexico is very Catholic too, and we are very drunk country too.
And wild and dangerous, exactly. Yeah, exactly. Well,
but what is your about the religion in these times?
I think we need religion. I think we need religion more than ever. And I think that politics has taken the place of religion. And that's why we see the utter fanaticism with which moral purity is kind of like searched out, and witch trials and policing of language. And I think this hatred of other people, this demonizing, the religious impulse has been totally channeled into this kind of fervor. They want heaven on earth, this utopia on earth. And it's the same fervor and the same fervent policing of other people's behavior that it used to be the priesthood that did. Well, I laughed at the priesthood just like I laugh at these people these days. But I do think we need religion. And I don't mean a religion of the priesthood, a religion which is sex denying or which is the sex police. I don't talk about that. I talk about a religion which is non-doctrinal, but teaches us the glory and the mystery and the miracle of existence. I think we need religion to turn us back to praise, to understanding that the greatest act that a man or a woman can do on this planet is worship, an act of worship for the unlikely miracle of it. And that's where I think religion comes in. And I consider myself a religious writer because I consider myself writing in order to transform reality, to re-enchant it. And that's a religious impulse, to show you the beauty and miracle and awe without changing it, without saying it needs to get better, without saying until heaven on earth is made here, then it's not worth it. That'll never happen. I'm saying it's worth it right now. The game is worth it despite the suffering and the violence and the difficulty. In fact, you can't say yes to one part of it. Wow. You don't get to annex reality. You say yes to it all or not at all. And so my books are that ultimate religious impulse, the attempt to say yes to all of it, to affirm it as it is, not as I would prefer it to be. Because see, if everything was the way I would prefer it to be, it would be really, really boring.
Yeah, exactly. Yes. Wow. This sounds like an Iggy Pop song. So this is
yeah, exactly.
Totally. Oh, David, it's just a lot of Perry Como reference in the book. Why?
I grew up with Perry Como. He was my father's favourite figure, and I wanted to use him as a sort of a dissonant example, because for people of my dad's generation, art was something that, and I don't believe this at all, art was something that made you better. It was that Victorian idea that somehow art was something that would morally ennoble you. I have no time for that crap in any way whatsoever. But I find it quite a touching idea, and my dad had that idea. He thought that art would make you smarter, nicer, smoother, more stylish, you know?
Yeah.
And so he aspired to being like Perry Como, because to him, Como wasn't only the greatest singer of all time, but he was so suave. And they had all these legends about him, like he never swore, he never drove, he never, drank, he was always faithful to his wife. All these things that my dad and his brothers would never be capable of doing. They drank, they swore, they were madmen. So there was this dissonance. They looked up to this guy, he was so different to them, but somehow he stood for everything that might be beyond the narrow horizons that they lived in Belfast. So I wanted to use him in terms of that as a sort of dissonant mirror for the other characters, but also because I love him. It's a huge part of my life. He's probably the voice I know best beyond my wife and family, his voice. And when I was young, I would say, I would ridicule him to my dad and say he was a square because I was into punk rock. But now when I hear him, I was just too young. But now when I hear him, it's so heavy. When he sings something like "It's Impossible" or "For the Good Times," you feel the weight of a man's life lived. And it is incredibly moving. I can't really listen to Perry Como easily. I need to be in the right frame of mind because it will destroy me emotionally. And I've come to learn so much of what it is to be a man, the positive things of masculinity, through the same lessons that my father had, through the music of Perry Como, which is remarkable.
Yes, exactly. But I like Perry Como, but it's strange how, for example, don't listen the other crooners like Frank Sinatra, or I don't know, it's specifically Perry Como. So that's very interesting. I mean,
yeah, the other crooners have never appealed to me. I've never gone down a Sinatra route. I don't know why. I think what I would say is what it is about Como is that he's not like Sinatra is like the ultimate sort of interpreter. He's the ultimate person who makes the song into perhaps its greatest manifestation. But Como does the opposite. He does the version of it. He makes the ultimate solid version of that everyone else extrapolates from somehow, So Sinatra takes it somewhere else, but for me, Como makes it more elemental. His is always the elemental reading that all the others seem to sort of gravitate around. There's something about it. And he's so easy, and his style is so easy. There's a great essay by William Burroughs, and it's called something like "Do Easy, Go Easy." And it's his style. It's about being easy. And to me, when I read that essay about Burroughs, I always think of Como. I don't know, I have no idea if Burroughs ever got to Perry Como, but when Burroughs talks about creating a sort of doing easy, going easy, that's how Como created. And I love that weird world. As for the good times, the same world where William S. Burroughs and Perry Como can sort of coexist,
Yes, exactly. Wow. When I start read your novel, and I discovered this is a story about four guys in the Ireland in the 70s, in part of the IRA. I'm immediately going for a vinyl for the Pogues, because the Pogues are one of my favorite bands all the time. I love the Pogues. I mean, for me, it's a fucking great band, and I don't know why. But when I start listening whatever song of the Pogues, I'm start to cry. It's very sensitive for me. I don't know why. But my question is, what is your favorite rock band? Because you're a good musician journalist and a rock journalist. So, what is your favorite rock band from Ireland? And it's good if you say U2.
well, if we can count the Pogues, we say the Pogues. I mean, the Pogues by a mile. The Pogues mean everything to me. And in fact, Spider Stacey actually read For the Good Times, and I actually blurbed it, and has been a big fan and a big supporter. In fact, at a recent book launch, we read some poetry together, and I love the Pogues so much. They capture so much of what it was like for me growing up. There's that track, "The Body of an American," which details an Irish funeral, and it's so accurate. It's like, it was like my dad's funeral. Exactly. People getting drunk, starting talking about Irish history, and they start getting the songs out, and it just captures a whole sort of milieu of Irishness that I was part of when I was growing up. Yeah. And also, like Shane, I love the sort of violent poetry of it as well, you know. And I think he's absolutely one of the all-time great lyricists and songwriters. Just unbelievable. Yeah, they're amazing.
Yes, and you're still in contact, or you know, how is the rock music is in Ireland right now? Or I mean,
really good. It's really good. There's loads of brilliant bands like Fontaines DC and
Fontaines DC, yeah. Fontaines DC is from Ireland, right?
Yeah, and also Lancome. Don't know if you've heard Lancome. They're absolutely amazing as well. They're sort of like a post-Pogues kind of heavy sort of drone psych folk group. Really amazing. Again, I totally recommend them. There's always good stuff happening in Ireland. Ireland's always got a good sort of literary music scene, you know. There's always exciting stuff happening there. A lot of good writing as well, you know.
You was listening some special music meanwhile you write for the good times, or just very common? I mean, or I don't know how is your ritual when you write a novel, but you listen some special records meanwhile you was wrote for the good times, or this just random music?
No, I never listen to music when I write, ever.
Oh, really?
Because the whole thing for me is when I'm writing, I am sort of listening. I need to listen to the voices that are sort of being broadcast and that are sort of speaking through me. So I need total concentration, total silence. I need to hear well. I need to hear where the next sentence is coming, or hear what the inflection of the voice is, or hear how the rhythm of the character's prose relates. So I can't have any music on at all, ever. I just can't do it. I listen to music afterwards as winding down. I go back through to my kitchen where I've got my stereo set up and I get some vinyl out and I listen all the way through. But when I'm working, no music, ever.
Wow, I don't know, that surprised me, because I was thinking you listen to music all the time.
If I'm not writing, I'm listening to music, basically, yeah. But also my prose kind of aspires to music, so I want it to have a musicality itself. So often what I'll do is I'll be speaking it out loud or reading it out loud again and again and again to get the rhythm, to make sure I've got the musicality and the way it's moving. So again, I can't have any other music imposing rhythms on me, you know.
Yes, and no, because I was thinking in your first novel, this is Memorial Device, and this is a completely a music novel, actually. Yep. So I was thinking, how was your process? And I don't know. Meanwhile, I'm searching some reviews about your novel, and surprisingly, I knew exists a 90s folk singer they call David Keenan, just like you. I mean, you listen him?
Yes, we performed together.
Oh, really?
Yeah, we did a festival in Ireland, and I've got my next novel that came out after For the Good Times in the UK is called Este, and it's actually got chord patterns in the book, so you can actually accompany the book. So what David did was I read from the book, and then he sang a part of the book, which he arranged for guitar and vocals. It was amazing. David is so talented. I'm so lucky that he's talented, because it would have been a nightmare if he was like really crap and he had the same name, you know what I mean? But he's actually amazing. In fact, to me, he is like a Celtic soul. You know, he has that Celtic soul, Van Morrison, a bit Tim Buckley, just that magical persona. And I'm actually on his new album. I recorded a piece I'm on a song on his new album, which I did a recording of a vocal for. So yeah, we're working together, and it's really been a lot of fun.
Oh my God.
No, it's mad.
That's very funny.
Yeah.
And well, I think this time of the conversation is that over. So David, what do you expect from this book, For the Good Times, and what is your plans in the future? You have a plan on a new novel, or what is your next project?
I've got a bunch of new novels coming out. A bunch of new novels already out in the UK, which hopefully will be coming out in Mexico in due course. I've got one called Este, as I said, and there's one. I just published my latest novel in the UK, which is this. It's called Monument Maker. It's a really it's huge. It's like 250,000 words, and that just literally came out last month. So it'll maybe be a little while before I have another book coming out, but it looks like the next novel, it will probably be a prequel to this is memorial device set in the 1960s instead of the 70s and 80s.
Oh my God, that sounds very interesting.
Yeah, I'm really excited about it, and I can't wait for people to read it. It's kind of about the bands before Memorial Device, the psychedelic scene in Airdrie. It's wild. I'm really excited about it. It's finished, so it's just when we decide we're going to publish it.
Yeah, wow. I mean, how can you make a prequel, yeah, like a novel of this is Memorial Device? I mean, it's a hard work, or how you create
It came quite easy. I didn't even know. I wasn't consciously ever going to do that. I didn't set down ever to write a prequel, but I'm starting to realise that all of my novels all take place in a single fictional universe. They're all linked. There are links to all the novels, and they're all in the one universe. So I began to realise I am constantly writing about this one world. And then when I began writing about the 1960s, I just realised this is taking place in Airdrie, and this is the generation slightly before Memorial Device. And then I realised there's a character called Teddy Ohm, who's a record collector who keeps his records in a nuclear bunker in Memorial Device. Well, he returns because he was older in Memorial Device, so it's about him and his friends in the 1960s. So Teddy Ohm is one of the main characters. But again, it just happened. I was listening, I was writing, I began to realise I was writing this book. It was an amazing experience. I never thought I would, but I'm very excited that I have.
Yeah, I see, because this is Memorial Device. I mean, it's, for the people who's watching this conversation, it's I very, very recommend that book because it's so amazing, and I'm very surprised when I was reading, and it's a kind of tribute to the post-punk in Edinburgh, or something like that. But I don't know if this is the right word. But it's amazing novel, David. It's amazing novel, like for the good times. So I don't know how is the time, but thank you very much, David, for your time. This is a very, very delicious conversation. You have some plans for coming to Mexico soon?
Oh my God, as soon as possible. I mean, try and stop me. I mean, I miss being in Mexico so much. I mean, it's like we've had so many wonderful times there, and so much fun. And yeah, I miss all my brothers and sisters there so much. Yeah, I mean, first chance I get, as soon as this lockdown eases and I can go over there, I am coming over because I miss it.
Yes, exactly. And just my last question. Okay, the name of your novel is For the Good Times. How do you think about this idea of always the past time is the best times? Do you think that is possible? I mean, how can you understand? And it's a very interesting name because it's for the good times. So, do you think, I don't know, maybe the past violent times is better than today? I mean, how do you feel of this idea of the past and the present? And we always looking, the past like, oh, that's a good times, and now. But how do
It's
you feel
funny,
that?
yeah. It's a good question, Wenceslao, because I mean, a lot of my books are about looking back. I'm very, very into memory, and I have a good memory. I never forget most of the things that happened to me in my life, and a lot of detail. But a lot of my books are about memorializing. That definitely memorial device for the good times. But that's something I want to put, because I write in gratitude. I want to keep these things alive that were so beautiful. The gifts that my life gave me, I want to memorialize them, and as a way of saying thank you. That the past meant so much to me, and I'm so glad of it. But honestly, I'm not nostalgic. I'm not nostalgic in the slightest. I always want now. Is the only word that I am ever interested in. Now is the best time. Now always will be, and the only time we have to exist in is now, and never exist in the past. One of the things I wanted to do by calling it For the Good Times was to have a certain irony, because no one would think, looking back to the Troubles and saying that they were the good times. But guess what? A lot of people actually did feel that when they look back that they were good times, despite suffering and violence. And if you cannot look back and say things were good, only if they weren't in the presence of suffering and violence, you'll never be able to affirm anything. And you'll certainly never be able to affirm now, because you'll always be waiting for now to improve before you can affirm it. I believe in saying yes to whatever the moment presents.
Great answer.
It's a challenge, a great challenge.
David, thank you so much for this delicious conversation. Esto fue una conversación, presentación de la nueva novela Por los Buenos Tiempos de David Keenan, que lo pueden encontrar en español por Sexto Piso. Son de las grandes novedades de Sexto Piso de este año. Y bueno, pues esto fue una una pequeña charla ahí para conocer más del proceso de la novela y de las grandes ideas y de los buenos gustos musicales de David Keenan. Esto fue parte de las mesas híbridas de la Feria Internacional del Libro de Guadalajara 2021. Gracias por acompañarnos en nombre tanto de la FIL como de Editorial Sexto Piso. Y aquí nos vemos en una próxima emisión para seguir hablando de novedades, violencia, buena música y sobre todo hombres. Thank you, David.
Thanks, Wenceslao. Pleasure.
Thank you.